So this Google Doc is incredibly detailed. Anyone can open it. You've got information about traffic lights and traffic and transportation, medical aid, accommodations, food. What sparked the idea to do something like this?
As tech companies, it's hard to figure out what we can do to stop something that's of this great proportion. A war is hard to stop when you're working on tech and software. But as we saw the attack on Ukraine unfolding and our own employees in these regions in such great distress, we started that Google document immediately to see what would be the best path to get them to safe shelter. We started sharing it with our partners and our community, and we realized that many more people needed it than we thought initially. So it just started growing from there to the place where it's at now, 90 pages or so, and it's accessed by tens of thousands and keeps growing.
Now, I know when you started this, it was just you and one or two other people. How many people are working on this now? How constantly are you updating it?
It's real-time updates. A lot of people are contributing from different countries as new policies are being added in Australia or in Germany or in UK. The policies are updated in the Google Doc. There are thousands of contributors, and we look at every information that's being put to make sure that it's vetted. Obviously, it's very important that the information gets vetted so that this is life and death situation, so it has to be accurate.
We're actually looking at scrolling through this Google Doc right now. Are there any stories that stand out to you of the people who have been helped by this? I'm sure you've got stories flooding in, people who wouldn't have known what to do.
It's heartbreaking. I am part of thousands of WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups where people are asking left and right for help on how to get to certain borders, how to make sure that they're not in the lines of fire and that they get shelter on the other sides. Most people in Ukraine, as you can tell, have stayed behind to fight, including our own employees. The ones that are going out and looking for shelter are mostly women and children and elderly. So it's harder for them to access something like a Google Doc because they're not typically that used to that kind of format. So what happens is that there's one leader out of 3 or 4 groups that tells them, okay, there's this document, we can rely on it to find shelter. And that person usually leads them through their way.
Right.
There was a family recently, they just got with 12 kids in a Romanian hotel, and they sent me a picture with them being crowded on mattresses. It's constant outpouring of messages like that.
You yourself grew up under a dictatorship in Romania, where now so many Ukrainians are fleeing. What are you hearing from family and friends in Romania about what that's like, seeing all of these people come across the border?
Ukraine and Romania are quite similar in that they've lived under some oppression of some kind from Russia, and at the same time, there are some friendships that have formed. I don't think that anyone feels like there's a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's mostly that there's a war between Putin and Ukraine. Everybody who's on the more educated front on Russia feels that even though they're not allowed to talk about it, that this is not a sentiment that they share, that they should be attacking. And in Romania, there's this looming fear that is reminiscent of communism, of dictatorship, where everybody was afraid to speak out, everybody was in a state of fear. And constantly propaganda played on TV. So it's a movie that we're familiar with.